The night my sister introduced her fiancé as the most decorated man in any room he walks into, I was standing at the end of the table in my paramedic uniform, still smelling like an ambulance because I'd driven straight from a 12-hour shift to make it to her engagement dinner on time. I hadn't even had a chance to change. That detail matters. Hold on to it. My name is Jade, and for most of my adult life, I've been what my family calls dependable, which I've come to understand is just a polite word for available, to pick up the tab. Available to pick up the tab. Available to wire money when things got tight, which in my family's case was roughly every 3 to 4 months, like clockwork. I'm 31. I work as a senior paramedic with BC Emergency Health Services out of Vancouver. I've been on the job since I was 23, and in those 8 years, I've pulled people out of cars on the sea to sky. I've worked overdoses in the downtown east side. I've held people's hands in the back of an ambulance while they took their last breath, and I kept my voice steady and told them they weren't alone. I don't say this to sound heroic. I say it because I want you to understand what kind of person it takes to do that job, and then tell me why that same person couldn't say no to her own mother when she asked for another e-transfer. My sister's name is Petra. She's 27, 4 years younger than me, and she has always been, in our mother's words, the sensitive one. Which meant that from the time I was 16 and working at a grocery store in Burnaby, and Petra was 12 and finding herself, the invisible contract in our household was already written. I would provide, Petra would receive, and our mother would smile and say things like, "You've always been so strong, Jade. Petra just needs a little more time." Petra got a lot of time. She dropped out of Langara after 2 semesters. Our mother called me and said the tuition deposit was non-refundable, $4,200, and could I help cover it so things didn't get too stressful at home. I was 24. I had just started my second year on the job. I said yes. Petra tried cosmetology school. She didn't finish that either. I covered the kit fees $260 because our mother said Petra was really trying this time. Petra moved to a studio in New Westminster that she said she could afford with her barista income. She couldn't. I covered 3 months of her shortfall before she moved back home, each transfer between $400 and $600. Never quite enough that it felt like a big ask, always just enough that saying no felt cruel. I did all of this while paying my own rent on a basement suite in East Van, my own car insurance, which in this province is not cheap, and my own student loan from the health sciences program I actually finished. I didn't complain. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself I was lucky to have a stable job and Petra was still figuring things out and family helps family. That's just how it works. The year Petra met Kyle was the year I finally started to feel like I could breathe. She seemed genuinely happy. He had a good job, project manager at a mid-sized construction firm out in Langley, and he seemed steady in a way Petra's previous boyfriends had not been. My mother adored him. She called me the first week Petra brought him home and said, "He's the one, Jade. I can feel it. He's going to take care of her." I remember thinking, good. That's genuinely good. Someone else can do that now. I should have known better than to relax. The engagement happened fast 8 months after they met, and my mother called me before Petra even officially announced it. She was practically vibrating through the phone. Kyle proposed last night. Jade, it was beautiful. He took her to White Cliff Park and everything. And then, after a pause so short it barely existed, the ring is being resized. The jeweler said it's going to be $600 and Kyle's cards are all maxed from the proposal trip. Can you cover it just until he pays you back? I sat with that for a moment. $600 for my sister's engagement ring, because her fiancé's cards were maxed. I said I'd think about it. That was the first time I had ever said anything other than yes, and my mother went quiet in a way that felt like a warning. I transferred the money 2 days later. I told myself it was a one-time thing. I told myself it was a social occasion. It wasn't a one-time thing. Over the next 4 months, I covered Petra's bridal magazine subscriptions, her engagement photo session, Because Kyle's cousin, who was basically a photographer, cancelled last minute and they'd already booked the park and a bachelor deposit in Kelowna that Petra said she'd repay when she got her next paycheck. She never mentioned it again and I never asked. The dinner was my mother's idea. A proper family engagement dinner, she called it. To celebrate properly with Kyle's family too. She chose the venue, a steakhouse in downtown Vancouver. Good area, nice lighting, the kind of place where the bread alone costs more than a full meal somewhere else. I looked up the menu online when she told me. Main started at $58. Mum, I said carefully, how many people are we talking? Just Kyle's family, Kyle's parents, his brother, his sister, us three, maybe 10 people. I did the math. I should have said something then. I didn't. I thought maybe Kyle's family would split it. I thought maybe my mother had already figured out the bill. I thought a lot of things that turned out to be wrong. I came straight from a shift. I won't apologize for that. We'd had a bad one, a 2-vehicle on the Barnett Highway, and I'd spent the better part of 3 hours on scene before we even got to handoff. By the time I got to the restaurant, it was 7:15 and the table had already ordered drinks. I was still in uniform navy cargo pants, service boots, my jacket with the BCEHS badge on the left shoulder and my crew designation on the chest. My hair was up. I had not slept in 19 hours. I walked in and found the table by the sound of my mother's laugh. She was sitting beside Kyle's mother, who was elegant in the way that some women in their late 50s are. Quietly expensive, good earrings, the kind of posture that suggests private school somewhere in her past. Kyle's father was at the head of the table. Kyle was next to Petra, who was glowing in a cream blouse I recognized as new, her ring catching the light every time she moved her hand, which was often. Kyle's brother was there, and his sister, and across the table from the empty seat they'd saved me was a man I didn't recognize. Mid-30s, clean cut, wearing a button-down that fit like it was made for him. He was talking to Kyle's father when I walked in and he paused mid-sentence when he saw me. I registered the pause and filed it away. Jade! My mother stood and kissed my cheek. We ordered you the salmon. I haven't sat down yet, I said, but I said it quietly and I sat. Petra leaned across the table. You couldn't change? I came straight from work. You smell like the ambulance, she said and laughed, and Kyle's sister laughed too, and the table moved on. It was the man across from me who didn't laugh. I noticed that. My mother introduced me around. Kyle's parents, very warm, genuinely so. His brother, friendly. His sister, polite. And then the man across from me. And this is Marcus, Kyle's college friend. He's visiting from Ottawa. Marcus nodded. His eyes had not fully left the patch on my chest since I sat down. Paramedic? He asked. Senior paramedic, I said. BCEHS? He nodded again, slowly, like he was processing something. I didn't think much of it. Some people get weird around first responders, especially if they've had a bad experience. I'd learned not to push. The dinner moved along. Kyle's father made a toast that was genuinely lovely. My mother cried, which she does easily and without embarrassment, which I actually love about her. The food arrived, and it was good. The kind of good that justifies the prices if you're the kind of person who has a budget for it. The wine was poured. The bread was, as expected, exceptional. And then Petra said it. She'd been building to something, I could feel it. She had that particular energy she gets when she's about to perform, shoulders back, chin up, voice pitched just loud enough for the whole table. She'd had 2 glasses of wine. You know what's funny? She said, not really asking anyone, is that I used to brag about having a paramedic in the family. Back in high school, I thought it was so cool. She paused, smiled. The smile had an edge to it I knew well. But then you realize it's basically just driving a really fancy van. The table went quiet. Not completely. Kyle's sister made a sound that was almost a laugh and stopped herself. Kyle's mother reached for her wine glass with deliberate focus. My mother looked at her plate. I said nothing. I have said nothing in situations like this my whole life, and the silence has always been taken as agreement. I mean no offense, Petra added, which is what people say when they absolutely mean offense. None taken, I said, which is what I always say, which is not true. Marcus had set down his fork. He was looking at Petra now, not at me, and there was something in his expression that had shifted, a kind of careful stillness. "What is it you do, Petra?" he asked. His tone was perfectly pleasant. "I'm in events," she said. "I'm actually starting my own planning business." He picked up his fork again. "What kind of events?" "Weddings, corporate, that kind of thing. I've done a few already." She had done one, a friend's baby shower. "I know this because I'd helped her assemble the centerpieces." "Kyle tells me you're into fitness too," she said, pivoting toward Marcus with the particular brightness she uses when she decides a man is worth impressing. "He said you do triathlons." "Among other things," Marcus said. "Kyle said you were some kind of military person, or used to be." There it was. I'd heard about Marcus from Kyle in passing, something about army, something about before he went into the private sector. I hadn't paid much attention. "Used to be," Marcus confirmed. "Kyle made it sound very impressive," Petra said. She glanced at me and back. "Not like a weekend warrior thing. Like actually serious." "It was a job," Marcus said. "Were you deployed?" "A few times." Petra leaned forward. "See, that's what I mean by real service, like actual sacrifice." She said it without looking at me. She didn't need to. The implication was clear enough. Marcus looked at her for a moment. Then he looked at me. "Can I ask," he said, and his voice was still perfectly even, "what unit designation that is on your jacket?" I looked down reflexively at the patch on my chest. "Coastal Critical Response Team," I said. "It's a specialized unit. We do technical rescues, high-risk extractions, that kind of thing." The table was quiet again. "CCRT," Marcus said. "Out of Vancouver?" "Yes." He set his fork down again. Not with emphasis. Just set it down. "You were on the Squamish incident," he said. "It wasn't really a question. 2 winters ago, the avalanche." I looked at him properly then. "I was on scene, yes." "I know," he said. "I know because my teammate was one of the people you pulled out." The table had gone completely still. Even the ambient noise of the restaurant seemed to drop away for a moment. "He called you guys angels," Marcus said. He couldn't remember faces he'd been under for a while. But he remembered the patch. He drew it for us afterward. He looked at the patch on my chest again. That patch. I did not know what to say. I rarely do in moments like that. You don't do this work for the recognition. Most of the time you drive away and you never know what happened to the people you handed off. You eat that uncertainty and keep going. Petra was very quiet. "She drove a really fancy van to that one too," Marcus said. And his voice was pleasant still, exactly as pleasant as it had been all evening. He picked his fork back up and looked at Petra with an expression that was not unkind, but was not soft either. Just so we're framing this correctly. Kyle made a sound that was half laugh, half something else. His mother reached over and touched my hand briefly across the table, which I wasn't expecting, and for a second I had to look at the ceiling. Petra said, "That's not what I meant." "I know," Marcus said. "But that's what you said." My mother was looking at me with an expression I had not seen from her in a very long time. Something complicated, something that nooked around the edges like shame. The bill came to $940 before tip. I know because I saw it. Kyle's father took it. He didn't make a production of it. He just reached over, looked at the total, and handed his card to the server without commenting on it. He caught me watching and gave me a small nod, and I thought, this is what it looks like when someone actually takes care of people without announcing it. We said our goodbyes in the foyer. Marcus shook my hand at the end, a firm, brief handshake, and he said quietly, so only I could hear, "He's doing well, by the way. Started coaching youth hockey in Medicine Hat. He talks about the team that pulled him out every time someone asks about the scar on his forearm." I nodded. I couldn't quite speak. "Thank you," he said. "For real." Outside, under the awning on Robson, waiting for my Uber while Petra and Kyle lingered by the door, my mother came and stood beside me. We didn't say anything for a moment. The rain was doing what Vancouver rain does in November, which is fall sideways and pretend it isn't cold. "I didn't know about the avalanche," she said finally. "You didn't ask." She was quiet. You've never asked, Mum. Not once. In 8 years, you've never asked me about a single call. She looked at the street. A bus went by, its windows fogged from inside. I asked Petra how her days are, she said, and I could hear in her voice that she was realizing something even as she said it. Every day. I call her every day. I know. I didn't think you needed it. You've always been so dependable, I said. She looked at me. That's the word, isn't it? I said. That's always the word. She reached over and took my hand, not with the easy, unthinking affection she gives Petra, but carefully, like she was aware of the weight of it. Like she was trying to get it right for once. I'm sorry, she said. I didn't say it was fine. That was new. My Uber came. I got in, and I looked back through the rain-blurred window at the restaurant entrance, where Petra was leaning into Kyle and laughing at something, her ring bright even in the grey light, and I thought about how, for years, I had told myself I was okay with being the invisible one, the strong one, the one who needed nothing. I drove home, and I didn't e-transfer anyone that night. I didn't the week after either. My mother called me on a Thursday, a real call, not a request. She asked about my week. I told her about a call in Maple Ridge, nothing identifying, just the shape of it, the kind of day it had been. She listened. She asked questions, small ones, careful, like she was learning a new language. It was the first time in 8 years she'd done that. Petra and I are not close right now. That's okay. Some distances are honest. But when my mother called last month just to check in, no ask at the end, no transfer request, no Petra is going through a thing, just her voice in mine and the comfortable quiet of someone who is finally, slowly, learning to see me. I sat in my car in the BCEHS parking lot before my shift and I let myself feel it. Whatever it was a start. And sometimes that's enough. I think about Marcus a lot. Not in a romantic way, just in the way you think about someone who accidentally handed you something you didn't know you'd been waiting for. He didn't defend me because he knew me. He defended what was true. And there's a difference there that I keep turning over because I spent so many years waiting for the people who did know me, who'd known me my whole life, to do exactly that. They didn't. A stranger at a dinner table did it instead without being asked, without making a speech about it. He just said what was accurate and let it land. I used to think the problem was that I wasn't visible enough, that if I just worked harder, showed up more, covered more of the gap between what my family needed and what they had, eventually someone would notice and the scales would balance on their own. That's not how it works. I know that now. Kindness that comes without boundaries doesn't teach anyone to be careful with you. It just teaches them that there's no cost to being careless. My mother didn't see me because I'd made myself too easy to overlook. Every e-transfer, every yes, when I meant no, every time I showed up in a uniform smelling like work and apologized for it, I was telling them without words that my presence required no effort from them. That's not a criticism of who I am. I think the instinct to take care of people is genuinely good. I think it takes a certain kind of character to show up for others consistently, to be reliable in a way that costs you something real. But character without judgment is just exhaustion wearing a generous face. The honest part, the part that takes actual courage, is knowing when the giving has stopped being love and started being a habit the other person doesn't even notice anymore. What I learned from that dinner, from Marcus's quiet correction, from my mother's face when she realized she didn't know about the avalanche, is that being strong doesn't mean absorbing everything silently. It means being clear. It means saying, this is what I do, this is what it costs me, and I deserve to be seen for it. Not celebrated constantly, just seen. I also learned that the truth has its own timing. I didn't expose Petra. I didn't have a prepared speech. I just walked in as myself, tired and still in uniform. And the truth of what I do for a living did the rest. That's the thing about living with integrity over a long enough stretch. It accumulates. People who are paying attention will eventually see it, and the ones who aren't paying attention will eventually run into someone who is. My mother is learning to ask questions. That matters to me more than any apology would. I still care about my family. I'm just not invisible anymore. And I think that's something worth keeping.